All right, ready to rock and roll. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our presentation. It is an honor to be here on behalf of Disability Mobility Initiative, Disability Rights Washington, and Empower Movement Washington. Today, we will be sharing insights from our seminar report titled Connected by Transit, the Future of Community Access. And during our presentation, we will give a brief overview of findings, and afterwards our panelists will share their individual experiences. We hope you will be inclined to read over the questionnaires and take some notes if you feel so. And so here's a little bit more about us.
Okay. So hello, my name is Amara Schermerhorn. I'm the participant coordinator for the non-driver seminar, and my background is in graphic design. I actually started working for Disability Rights Washington as a designer for Empower Movement Washington. I'm a lifelong transit rider myself. I'm currently based in North Seattle, but I grew up in the Kent area, so I have quite a wide range of experience with transit, from riding the bus to the sounder, the ferry. I'm a fan of all of it.
And my name is Tanisha Sepúlveda. I am the presenter coordinator, and my background is in architectural engineering drafting. I'm currently working for Disability Rights Washington, and I'm the program coordinator and a founding member of Empower Movement Washington. I sustained a spinal cord injury when I was 20 years old, and now I rely on a power wheelchair to do life daily. Due to that shift in perspective, I definitely began noticing the major lack of accessibility in our built environment. This is what brought me into advocacy and into architecture. And I'm currently located in West Seattle. As mentioned, we are members of Empower Movement Washington. Empower Movement Washington is a BIPOC-led coalition of disabled advocates across Washington state. We advocate for equitable transportation and housing policies. Some of our interests include community engagement, transportation equity, mobility justice, and sidewalk accessibility audits. Pictured here are some of our MWA members doing a sidewalk accessibility tour on Capitol Hill last summer with author Jonathan Stalls. Traditionally, our sidewalk audits involve gathering with transportation professionals and interested organizations and walking a few blocks around a Seattle neighborhood to bring attention to the obstacles that many people with disabilities face every day that the average able-bodied person may not recognize. Recently, we conducted an accessibility audit around the upcoming Judkins Park Light Rail Station with representatives from Disability Mobility Initiative, King County Metro, WashDOT, and the Urbanist. So what are these non-driver seminars we're talking about? We wanted to create a space where disabled advocates could learn more about the transportation industry to make informed decisions. This series also allowed our participants to share their lived experiences riding transit directly with transportation professionals and decision makers. We conducted a 5-month-long educational workshop series about the transportation industry. Topics included federal advocacy, policy change, land use, transportation data, and more. We co-authored with our participants the Connected by Transit report to share our stories and make recommendations for improvement. Our cohort includes 20 disabled non-drivers, several of which are MWA members, located in rural, urban, and suburban areas across Washington. The seminars were a 25-minute presentation with about a 30-minute discussion period. And we made sure to frequently touch base with the group to understand the needs and wants of their community. This allowed us to tailor the seminar topics to their interests.
Okay, so the rides not taken affect every aspect of a non-driver's life, including punctuality to work and school, access to social gatherings, and access to healthcare. As non-drivers, it is common to forego such trips due to fare cost, span of service, or not wanting to ask friends or family for a ride. These factors often contribute to feelings of isolation. For example, while working remotely is certainly convenient, for those who don't have the chance to leave the house, it exasperates feelings of loneliness even more. According to our participants, reliable access to transit is a key part of feeling connected to their communities and to participate in society. So we'll go over the 3 recurring points that were brought up during several of our seminar topics. Those include service frequency, comprehensive planning, and complete sidewalk networks. We see the intersection of these topics as the key to enhancing the rider experience for disabled travelers across Washington state. So first, we'll look at some common comments from rural transit riders. So, thinking of rural areas across the state, think of Skagit County, Mason County, Roy, in eastern Washington, Tri-Cities. We can see how rural areas severely lack transit options. So, for example, late night service hours and service on weekends are scarce. Our participants note that 7-day service is crucial in order to maintain a social life, consistent employment, and access to spiritual services, especially on Sundays. Housing that is within walking distance to fixed route transit is even more rare. To address this, participants echo the need for on-demand rapid transit options. DRT can serve as connections to other means of transportation when there's no other options, such as transit hubs, city centers, to access daily needs like groceries, clinics, and again, just to be social, for fun. Going off of that, and I really appreciate all the paratransit people here today, because considering how paratransit and fixed route service kind of work hand in hand, when there's a lack of fixed route bus stops in rural areas, this severely impacts, again, disabled non-drivers' ability to leave their own home. So to enhance transit accessibility in rural areas, we must consider the people who live outside of the eligibility requirements, which is, living within 3/4-mile radius of a fixed route bus stop, and consider the benefit that these enhanced options would bring them. Even a few bus stops on the main road of a remote neighborhood would expand transit to hundreds, if not thousands, of people. So, many of those comments also relate to fixed route transit in rural, urban, suburban areas alike. When riders must make more than one transfer, a slight delay can add up to an hour to their usual commute. Additionally, to serve the needs of disabled non-drivers across the state, we should invest in safe facilities as well. Especially in Washington, exposure to the elements such as rain and snow, wind, can make waiting for a bus, a lot more uncomfortable than it needs to be. But going back to the frequency and how it relates to access, it's a lot more reliable, to have a bus that comes from, every 12 to 30 minutes, just to know you won't be stranded. So, yes.
Excuse me. So during our seminar, we learned a lot about the transportation and land use elements of comprehensive planning. In fact, most participants said they choose housing based on proximity to transit. Could you imagine living in your home for 10 to 20 or more years, raising a family, getting promotions, making memories, and then sustaining an injury that prevents you from ever going back? This was the case for more than a few of the older adults I met while recovering at Harborview Medical Center. The disabled community accounts for nearly a quarter of the population, yet the amount of accessible housing available is nowhere near enough to meet our needs. Aging adults also often prefer accessible housing so they can age in place. Being a disabled non-driver, it is so important for me to live near proximity or within proximity to basic needs, such as grocery stores, pharmacies, and all while being close enough to frequent transit so I can get to my appointments and commitments in a timely and reliable manner. Finding affordable housing that checks all of these boxes is nearly impossible, and it is becoming less and less common as Seattle's rent prices skyrocket and the apartment square footage shrinks. Many people in the disabled community are low income or unable to work and cannot afford to pay $1,500 a month for a one-bedroom apartment when Social Security and disability pay less than that monthly. And if you do work, your income is restricted, otherwise you begin to pay it back to the state. The cutoff point is around $2,100 per month, which still leaves you below the poverty level. This is including what Social Security pays you. On top of that, apartments often require you to have 2 to 3 times the amount of rent and income, which is another restricting stipulation. While we are being pushed out of the city, we are also being pushed away from frequent transit and access to opportunities. In my 14 years of being disabled, I have never lived in an actual ADA unit. I have only ever lived in units that are accessible to me. Even with finding an apartment that checked all of these boxes, or most of them, the sidewalks accessing the transportation stops left much to be desired. Living in a previously redlined neighborhood, the historic lack of funding is still visible today. Lack of funding for infrastructure. Missing curb cuts and sidewalks, broken and uneven pavement, gravel spilling out from alleyways and parking lots, and overgrown bushes from adjacent properties, to name a few, forced me to use the road for safety, which is not and should not be the safer option for pedestrians. I have been yelled and cursed at, I have been accidentally doored, I have almost been hit while traveling in the road. And I shouldn't have to risk my life in order to get groceries or go to the park. And these are just my personal experiences. I'm only one of thousands of people who struggle with these similar issues to find suitable housing. And this is also why complete sidewalk networks are so vital for our communities. Everybody uses them. The young, the old, the able-bodied, the disabled, non-drivers and drivers alike. We all benefit from them. When the sidewalks are broken or obstructed, they become hazardous, and this includes fallen leaves and snow. When we get snow, of course the city clears the roads, and by doing so, they push the snow up onto the sidewalk, blocking curb cuts. Thus again, inadvertently, isolating the disabled community. Another reason why collaborating with disabled non-drivers is necessary to identify such obstructions. Smooth, level, clear, and connected sidewalks should be a top priority.
All right. Thank you for sharing, Tanisha. That was fantastic. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And while we all have a deep appreciation for public transportation operators, driving transit is a social service that requires both nuance and respect. Though in some cases, disabled travelers feel misunderstood and cast aside by drivers. As you will hear in the Rider Experience panel, Several participants agree that drivers require continuous training about providing assistance to people with different types of disabilities, how to handle different mobility devices, and how to approach individuals with respect. When agencies develop such training programs, including input from the disabled stakeholders and notifying the community of training efforts would prove a commitment to enhancing safe transit for all. Finally, we want to touch base on accessible communications. In every topic we've mentioned, there is a common factor. The disabled community wants to be heard earlier in the planning process, before products are launched, before construction begins, before it's too far along in the process. It's important to involve disabled stakeholders in every phase of the project design. So, when creating offerings that are digital, it's very important to include screen reader users. I know that when we are planning the non-driver seminar series, we sent out a survey asking people what they needed to feel successful when learning about such complex topics. And one comment that we got repeatedly was simply, make sure the materials are accessible. So it goes a very long way just knowing that people are able to access what they need consistently. Okay.
So as you've heard, there is a need to prioritize community involvement. Listen to the real stories from community advocates and understand how a lack of accessible transit can affect many aspects of one's life. It's why we should prioritize enhancing accessibility standards. It is critical that we start developing standards that account for the aging population and all disabled travelers. Whether you're a fellow advocate, a student, a manager, a policymaker, a family member, a caretaker, a friend, a teacher, everybody can play their part in championing for community resilience. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to these problems, nor one single agency or organization responsible to make these changes. It's going to take a collective effort, including everyone in this room, to really make our state a leader in equitable transportation and housing. So how do we stay connected? Our full report, Connected by Transit, The Future of Community Access, will be released on May 31st, 2024. We left our contacts, our email addresses up here for you all, and of course, please visit Empower Movement Washington's website at www.emwa, that's EMWA.info.